Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another series in the newly purchased stack of movies that I got last Saturday at Opera House Video. This is, I think, the third or fourth video, but I got a ridiculous amount of movies last Saturday. And then the week before, I made another trip up to my favorite shop, Bull Moose. Although I changed it up a little bit and I went to the Bull Moose in Bangor. I usually go to, about 90% of the time, I go to the Waterville Bull Moose. And, the reason I go there, it's funny because each Bull Moose is a little bit different. Depending on each location is a little bit different as far as I think what they offer. Their selection is always there's always a lot of variety between the shops. There's Bull Moose has been around for probably like 30 years or so now. It's been very steadfast, and I feel just kind of an inspiring thing that they're able to still be a thing and still remain a viable business because of where we are now with in our culture as far as everything being at our fingertips, and the idea or just the notion how people's attitudes, how they've shifted and changed towards physical media, with books and movies and music and all these things. Like, most people don't you know really want to obtain physical media anymore. It's funny because, and I understand the the predicament of that, but it's interesting too because one of my best friends, Sean Russell, who lives in New York, talked about him a lot before on these shows, and he was actually a guest on here last year. He uh, he got married about ten years ago, and then him and his wife, they both moved to New York. He's an old college friend. I met him in college. He was actually the first person I met in school. Turned me on to so many cool things, so much cool music, and so many cool movies and directors. He really got me into all kinds of music. He was a real pivotal person for me at that time in my life and in my age group. I was about 18, and he just basically he had exposed me to a lot of things I was not familiar with at all, and I really soaked up so many of those things. And then that's kind of where I feel at that age was, especially with being a fan of film. That was really when I had always been a huge fan, but that's when it went to another level as far as paying closer attention, paying closer to the attention of what movies I was watching. I started following directors, and then tracking down, if I discovered a movie or a director that I really loved through him, I would seek out all of their films, and and then that's a couple of years after college was when, well, DVDs were the rage. So that's when I started buying movies. I always had a little bit of a collection. My folks always collected movies, mostly VHS, and a few DVDs here and there. But then around that time was when I started to become pretty proactive as far as buying movies, and actually, I started to build a little bit of a library, and the rest is history. But it's interesting because he is, into. We have a lot of the same tastes and interests, obviously, even to this day. And I remember when he moved to New York, he's made that transition to not really acquiring physical media anymore, and it's mostly due because of the actual living situation. Having a place to keep everything, and if you're gonna build a library of films or build a library of records or CDs, you know, just having just being put in those in that limitation where you just don't have the space. So he really, doesn't have that kind of a physical collection. He mostly has everything in its digital format. So I understand in a lot of cases, it's it's a kind of a necessity. You kind of have to do that. For me, I have a big physical collection with CDs and everything that I love as far as when it comes to physical media. I just recently got some new shelving for my movies. I'm gonna do a show. My collection and where my space is, as far as where I have my library of movies, is still in a state of disarray. But when I have it, together and maybe it's a little bit more presentable, I'm gonna do like a video in the future where I'm gonna just do show off my entire collection because I did one video. Geez, it's probably a couple of years ago now. I Last year, about 2 years ago, I started an Instagram page at Main Film Fanatic, alongside my Facebook page, and I did a video where I kind of showed off my collection. I didn't really do any. I wasn't in the video. I basically had a camera going and I just showed my collection. But I'd like to do a video. And since then, I have quite a few. It's been about a couple of years, so I have quite a. The collection's definitely increased, and I buy movies more frequently now. But what I want to do in the future is do a video of where I'll go through the movies and kind of show off everything. But recently, I just got some shelving because I needed it. I got into the problem of double stacking the movies, and it looked like crap. And I've been really, really focusing on beefing up my exploitation collection, and that's grown pretty well. So I needed to do that out of necessity. I never feel, of course, as much time as I put into it, and I do most of my money that I have or that I get from gigs or just spending money pretty much goes into pretty much 100% of that money goes into buying more movies. And I never feel my love of that wanes. I love the physical part of it. I love seeing the artwork. I love being able to physically pull something out of my collection. I'm a tactile oriented person, so that won't ever go away. It's the only thing that's an issue is of where I will be overwhelmed as far as space goes. But I'm pretty much I think okay in that department. I just need to organize it a little bit better. But I don't have any desire to cut back as far as buying more movies or more CDs for that matter because I I love collecting this stuff because it's stuff I listen to and watch regularly. So I try not to do shows that does happen on YouTube. With a few people I know on YouTube that I really love. And I've had a little bit of correspondence with, but they'll do shows on movies that they have not necessarily seen, but they just buy. I try to do every show on whatever movie I'm going to be talking about, or every show, whatever show I'm doing. I try to do it at least with the knowledge of seeing that movie a couple times, or at least once, so it's at least fresh in my head to talk about. So it's a lot of fun. But I have been buying a ton of movies lately. I went to Bull Moose, and like I said in the beginning, Bull Moose, each shop is pretty different from one another. The Bull Moose in Waterville is really great as far as their movie selection. Their music selection is not so great. I don't have very much luck getting good music there. The last time I went to Blue Moose, I went to Bangor, and they have a really great music selection. And I was really impressed with their movie selection this time. It was even better than previous visits. So I think I'm going to go up there again. I might go up there again this weekend. Uh, Not that I need to buy some more movies, but I think I might do it since I got some time off. The last day of school was yesterday, and I made a little bit of extra money the last few weeks. So, and I got some time off, so I might do that. There was a band I discovered. One of the cool things about the Bull Moose in Bangor is, like I said, their music selection's really awesome. There was a band I recently discovered called Inquisition that is this new, well, actually not new, but they've been around for actually a very, very long time. But for me, it was a very new discovery. They're uh, they're a black metal band from Seattle, Washington, and I had heard some of their music. I there's one show I watch on YouTube with this YouTube guy from England called Questy, and he does it's all music, and but most of the channel is focused on black metal, and black metal is one of my favorite forms of extreme music. It's my favorite style of metal. So I grew up, with the first wave of black metal and the second wave of black metal as a kid. And I kind of, not that I stopped listening to it, but I didn't stay up on newer bands for a long time. And I did take a break for a little while from listening to it for a good 15 years. And then I started to go back into my collection of cassettes that I had and some CDs of a lot of the classic black metal bands and albums. And I got really into the style all over again. And the last year or two, I've been checking out a lot of the newer bands that have been coming out. And I've been super, super blown away by some of the bands I have discovered. A few bands that I've discovered as far as newer discoveries or relatively newer bands. There's a band from England called Winterfilleth. They're an amazing band from England. Like kind of, they've been actually around for quite a few years, but for me, it's a new band, and they're still putting out albums, and they're just an amazing black metal band. They're probably my favorite black metal band right now, but just amazing. And I discovered them through Questy's show. Another band I really got into that I really love is this band from the Ukraine called Druk, which is another just spectacular black metal band. Newer, this totally new discovery for me, but they have been around for quite a few years, and I got one of their albums at Bull Moose. Super underground black metal, and I was blown away that they had one of their albums there and one of their better albums on CD. And then another band I just discovered is Inquisition, and they're just phenomenal. I've been listening to them a lot, and it's just super cool, and I love them so much. And I don't know, they might be my favorite new discovery when it comes to black metal. And when I was in Bull Moose in Bangor a couple of weeks ago, they had all of these albums by them, and then that's where I found the Druk album, which is really rare, really hard to find. Even Inquisition's really hard to find, but they had all of their albums there, and a bunch of other things, and I was really, really psyched. So I've been on a big metal kick lately, so I've been buying a lot of metal and a lot of black metal. So I scooped up a bunch of new titles, and they had a really great movie selection, and I bought some great movies, great exploitation movies up there. So, and then last week I went to Opera House Video. They had this massive sale, and I acquired a whole bunch of movies. So I've been these last all of these videos that I'm doing now are all about the stack of movies I bought. So today's show is about Multiple Maniacs. This is from 1970 by the infamous and iconic director John Waters. I had never seen this movie. I've seen most of John Waters, most of his films. Huge fan of his work. There's a big thing coming up here in Maine where he's going to be coming to the Waldo Theater, which is an amazing place. I just was fortunate last weekend to play some gigs there, and I've gone there quite a few times to go see movies. I might go there this Saturday, tomorrow. They're actually showing a few John Waters films because John Waters is actually going to be coming to Waldo Theater, which I unfortunately do not have tickets for because I missed the boat and it's sold out. He's coming for 2 nights, totally sold out. But he's an icon, and so in preparation for that, they're showing some of his movies. Cecil B. Demented, I believe, is the one they're going to be showing on Saturday night, and I think they're showing one other one. It might be a double feature, but I might be going to that. So, but this movie, like I said, I have seen a lot of his films. I've always been a huge fan. I had never seen this one, and I bought this at Opera House, and this is an amazing collection. This is a Criterion collection. It's DVD, but the special features on here are just spectacular. There's this like about a 45-minute interview with all of the cast, and it just came out. This edition came out in like 2017, I believe, and it's all new interviews with the cast. With them now being older, and it is so interesting and fascinating. It's almost as cool as the movie, and this movie is like it's kind of jaw dropping. It's so sleazy. It's so perverse. It's so incredibly low budget, and it's such a trashy movie experience. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's all about the interesting thing too, like reading about this movie and after seeing it, I had never seen this movie before. John Waters kind of modeled this film. The big inspiration for Multiple Maniacs was the Manson murders. This movie came out in 1970. So this happened. The Manson murders happened a few years before, and that was the Charles Manson family was the inspiration for this movie, which is crazy into itself. And it's basically about this band of freaks that are hell bent on every form of indulging in every form of perversion and illegal act that you can think of. It's a comedy. It's very funny, but it's super dark, and there's like all kinds of violence. Lots of people get killed. There's all kinds of perverted sex. There's rape scenes. It's just completely insane, and I love this movie. It's all black and white. And the other thing is that I'm just blown away by that this got a Criterion release. Like again, and this is like the epitome of exploitation, without a doubt. And you know, I, I was, I think I talked about this the other day in a video, but I, huge fan. I'm a huge fan of the Criterion collection, the Criterion series. They put out typically well, especially in the early years, they always specialized in putting out these like immaculate versions of a lot of great classics, a lot of foreign films, a lot of great foreign film directors. But they typically put together these remastered reissues of these classic films. They pack them with all kinds of special features. But the Criterion collection as a whole, they're typically very expensive. they're definitely, I think, on as a company and looking at the market itself, they're the most highly priced editions that you can acquire. There's a Borders music that which I'm amazed still exists, but there's a Borders music that exists that is in Augusta, Maine, which is a giant bookstore, and it's a really cool shop, but it's very expensive. And they have a music and movie section in the back of the store. And I've been up there a bunch of times, but I don't go up there very often just because they are very expensive. And they typically, when I go to buy new Blu-rays, I like to, you know, put most of my effort and money into beefing up my Exploitation collection. And they don't really have anything in regards to that kind of to that genre there. They do have a good assortment of movies, Blu-rays, and lots of 4Ks. But the thing that they have there that's really awesome is, I feel like, which is their specialty, is they have all of the Criterion movies there. And I have bought some in my travels up there, but they're so freaking expensive. I've seen some movies listed to be almost $40. Um, you know, for certain Fellini films, for instance, or even David Lynch films. But as far as like in the world of Exploitation, I never usually see them put out editions of any of those films. They typically put out, you know, quote unquote movies that are, you know, looked at as art house films. So, and you know, a lot of the times by the so-called art world, exploitation, the exploitation film isn't given, you know, legitimacy. It's just looked at as pure trash, so it's ignored. But you know, it's pretty amazing that, and I know it's interesting because John Waters, I feel, is a household name. He is, you know, without a doubt, an exploitation director. That is definitely how he got his start, and I think he carried that over even into, you know, the later part of his career where he did get more commercial and he got more clout in Hollywood. And but initially, I look at him as just being a real trashy exploitation director. And you know, but he's a household name. He's so popular, and I know there's tons of people out there that are movie fans, but they might not be very familiar with the exploitation world or even give it any kind of legitimacy, which is fine. But they all know and usually have, and for the most part, embraced John Waters. He's become a big figure in American pop culture. And so it's interesting that he's been embraced, and that the Criterion company has put out a bunch of his movies, like Pink Flamingos and various other things. Um, and and you know, and it was interesting watching this the other night because not only I had never seen this movie before, and I was super excited that I got this for like $3. It's DVD, but the quality of this is amazing, and it's Criterion, so the quality is just amazing. And typically, like if I was to buy this on Blu-ray, it would probably be like $35. So I, you know, I jumped at the chance to buy it. But I was amazed. I'm like, wow, like this is the trashiest of, you know, the trashiest of the trash exploitation, you know, and you know, in that style of my favorite genre of film. And I was just thinking, like, wow, like he's gotten this legitimacy by pop culture, and you know, where now Criterion is reissuing his movies, but yet, you know, you'd probably never see, you know, a film by Jess Franco or Herschel Gordon Lewis or Lucio Fulci. You probably never see one of their films in a million years, you know, be put out by Criterion. And I feel like those directors are just as good, easily. You know, those are some of my favorite directors in the exploitation world. And it's surprising, you know, because watching Multiple Maniacs, like it's so unbelievably bad and amazing at the same time, and it's so perverse and so low budget and so uh, dirty. It's, so I'm like, wow, like how come they don't put out a Herschel Gordon Lewis film like say 2000 Maniacs? What's the difference? To me as a fan and as a viewer, there's no difference between those directors, between a Herschel Gordon Lewis and John Waters. I feel like they were all kind of cut from the same cloth, the same work ethic. With not having access to the backing of a major studio, doing everything themselves, immersing themselves in guerrilla filmmaking, and just doing it, you know, outside of the quote unquote Hollywood system. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. The other director too, I feel, and I mentioned this before, but the other director in the horror genre who I consider to be part of one of the key figures in the horror exploitation world and the giallo world is Dario Argento. He's another one. He's another director who is known as pretty much a household name by pretty much everyone and their grandmother who are fans of film, and has been really embraced by the general public, and has gotten that respect. A lot the same kind of situation. Lots of people who are horror fans, but maybe have never taken the time to explore the world of Italian exploitation. But they might not have done that at all. But they all know who Dario Argento is. Like everybody knows who Dario Argento is. Everybody knows, has heard of, or has seen Suspiria. And I think, which is amazing and rightfully so, because he is, one of the most important figures in the world of horror exploitation and especially Italian cinema. And, one of my favorites. And so, but it's interesting because I feel like then look at other Italian directors, Bruno Mattei or Lucio Fulci, not super well known, but not a household name, say like Lucio Fulci. Or like Lucio Fulci is not a household name by any means like Dario Argento. So it's interesting. There's a lot of interesting parallels, I think, between Dario Argento and John Waters. I think, obviously, uh, Dario Argento was, a giallo horror filmmaker and still is, but his movies were super sleazy, uh, super dirty, super raw, and with John Waters being an exploitation director, where his films definitely are like more like black comedies, but they're really trashy. They share all of the same characteristics of what Dario Argento brought to the table too. Different styles. One, he's more Argento is obviously a horror director. Mostly, he's done all kinds of things, but he's mostly well known, mostly known as a horror director. But their style is, I feel, stylistically and where they came from, their whole aesthetic, the way they operate as directors and filmmakers is essentially the same. So I feel like even though they're very different, they're all cut from the same cloth, and there's a lot of interesting parallels in being that they're both embraced by pop culture. So it's interesting. Um, but again, I had never seen this movie before, and it's amazing. The cast is just incredible, and of course John Waters. I mean, the legend that he is, and he hasn't directed any movies in quite a long time, but he's still really really active. Of course, he directed Pink Flamingos in 1972. Just a classic movie. Hairspray 1988. When I was a kid, when I first came across John Waters, it was obviously his later films uh, that I grew up watching, and then I went back after as I got older to check out his old stuff, his older films. Uh, but I think probably the first movie I ever saw of his, which came out in 1990, and I saw this as a kid in high school or middle school actually, was Crybaby, which starred Johnny Depp, and Awesome movie. And then he also made Serial Mom in 1994, and that's a great movie too. So I started probably with those two films, Cry Baby in 1990 with Johnny Depp and Serial Mom. And then I worked my way back. Uh, Female Trouble in 1974, Polyester in 1981, and then of course this classic, Multiple Maniacs in 1970. Um, and of course this movie stars Divine, who is just amazing. A real, with today's day and age where there's a lot of uh, coverage of people who are talking about gender issues, and there being a degree of more acceptance of people living alternative lifestyles. Divine was one of those characters that was an actress but a burlesque dancer, and was a transvestite but was an actor, and created this amazing career. Uh, you know, really talking about issues that now are in the headlines, and fully, and she fully, as a character and as an actor and as a person, Divine fully embraced her lifestyle and wore it like a badge. And this was like 40 years ago. So it's really interesting how ahead of dealing with, say, LGBTQ rights and gay rights and gender equality, the acceptance of alternative lifestyles, sexual lifestyles, even philosophical lifestyles, where that is a very much a thing now in our culture. And John Waters was tackling a lot of these issues, and especially Divine was living and breathing these issues and bringing all of the stuff to the table when this stuff was never talked about. So very interesting, uh, you know, perspective on that. Um, Other movies that John Waters did in 1977, Desperate Living, great, another awesome film. A Dirty Shame in 2004, which is actually fairly recent. Cece, Cecil B. Demented, which came out in 2000. That's the movie I believe they're going to be showing tomorrow night at the Waldorf Theater. Pecker, which came out in 1998, and 1969, Mondo Trasho, which is supposed to be. I saw that movie a long time ago, and I remember it being probably the best John Waters film. He also directed and was in a few movies himself, John Waters. He was in Seed of Chucky in 2004, I Am Divine in 2013. There was a documentary about his amazing life, This Filthy World, in 2006. Just an amazing, iconic figure in the world of cinema. And again, I think even though I feel like he didn't do it or wasn't trying to do it, I think with a lot of social issues that we're talking about now that are in the headlines, and to a degree, I think there's a lot more acceptance and equality, and people are willing to talk about things at one point that were a taboo. John Waters was all about that, 40, 50 years ago, with gender equality and people being, accepting that they're freaks and being comfortable in their own skin and being and about self love and having that confidence in the day and age, especially in the, and during that time in those decades where, those things were maybe to a degree even more of a hot button issue, but way ahead of its time. And, you know, watching Multiple Maniacs, considering this, came out in 1970, which is just crazy, over 50 years ago, unbelievable. Like, and I'm blown away that a movie like this gets the Criterion treatment, which I think is amazing. And they should do more. They should. I'd love for Criterion to like put out other exploitation movies. Why the hell not? So yeah, this is an amazing movie. This, I don't know. It's hard to say. I've seen most of his films, but this I had never seen this movie. There's maybe one or two I haven't seen before. But this is an amazing movie. Like, I was just blown away by it. It's just, I was just so taken aback by how perverse this movie is and just how trashy it is. And I just loved it. Love that shit to get to death. And it's the definition of exploitation, the very definition of exploitation, and it's like the ultimate example of pure guerrilla filmmaking. Where you're just going for it, and you're not cutting any corners, and you're just going for that thrill ride. And this movie gives you that thrill ride at the highest level. So, and this edition is great. I'm super excited I bought this. The transfer is amazing. It's all shot in black and white, just gorgeous. The special features on here are just killer. Super funny, super weird, totally perverse, and just insane. This movie is completely insane. Yeah, multiple maniacs, 1970, John Waters. Definitely see this movie if you get a chance. I loved it to death. So this is Jason Dean. I'm going to be signing off now. So have a great day, and we will see you next time. Peace.